Hi, my name is Jamie Keane. I'm lead game designer on Far Cry 3. And so as you saw from the intro and the E3 demo, you're Jason Brody, you're trapped on this island, your boat's been destroyed, your girlfriend's been kidnapped, and everybody around you is completely crazy. I mean, that's the starting premise. We're not going too much into the backstory from there. I mean, in terms of Far Cry 3, the things that are going to be super important for the game, I think most of all is going to be about character realization and narrative. We want to grow from the great standpoint and the great basis that we had from Far Cry 2, and then add on top of that a very personal kind of story in terms of like that human scale of contact that you have with, for example, the characters you see here, which is Vaz. We want that intensity, that kind of credibility of performance to kind of permeate the whole experience. We wanted to look at the history and the DNA of the franchise, and obviously there's been quite a lot of variety in the way that the games have been realised. We wanted to pick the bits that we felt kind of hit most what a Far Cry experience should be about. So we looked at Far Cry 1 and there's that tropical setting. It's a Far Cry 2 with that super gritty setting. We wanted to kind of take those two elements, combine them, and then on top of that add our own flavour to it, which I think you get with this whole Insanity vibe. And I think it fits really well with the juxtaposition between this kind of like super lush environment where you just kind of want to kick back and like you want to hang out on the beach or something, and then combine that with this kind of like really intense kind of personal experience that you have with a character like Vaz. I mean, we looked at the way that the gameplay sort of pans out in Far Cry 1, and it's something that works really nicely. I mean, particularly with regard to the water and stuff, that's definitely something that we really consciously wanted to bring back. So you had that feeling with Far Cry 1 that you'd dive underwater, you'd swim around and then jump out behind guys, and that's a really, really good feeling. You feel super empowered by that, and that's something we wanted to kind of bring into the experience here as well. And then coupled with that, I think that there were some really, really interesting kind of core shooter mechanics that happened in Far Cry 2 that were really, really brave and really kind of pushing the boundary. And again, we want that feeling too of, a really visceral shooting experience. I've said it now, visceral shooting experience. But a kind of really intense, kind of like, you really feel like you're there. And a lot of the first person realization is going to be about that you feel like you're in that body. There was some different sort of lessons that we could take from looking at what happened afterwards. I mean, we were all massive Far Cry fans, working on the franchise as well, even though we didn't all develop Far Cry 2. But, you look online, you look at forums and stuff, and you really see there's like a hit list of items that need to be looked at. Not that they were necessarily broken, but that they could have just perhaps gone a wee bit further. Things like the checkpoints, fast travel, and these are all the issues that we're looking into as well to try and improve from where they ended up on Far Cry 2, to kind of give you a bit more feeling of diversity in the world. Like it's more of a living world that you're kind of interacting with. It's not always going to be a hostile encounter. There's going to be, sometimes it'll be a bit more peaceful, sometimes it'll be a bit more neutral, sometimes you're not sure whether it's going to be hostile or not. And that feeling of being slightly unsure about how this is going to pan out is we want that kind of slight doubt in the player's mind. Oh, definitely vehicles. I mean, this in its DNA is a Far Cry experience. All the things that you expect to see in Far Cry 2, for example, and Far Cry 1, you'll definitely be seeing in Far Cry 3. So it's going to be something we're going to roll out over time. I mean, people have asked a lot about kind of what the size of the island is and that kind of thing. I don't think it's necessarily so much about actual kind of scale of the island, it's kind of density of experience. So you spend a lot of time just sort of like getting from A to B in a lot of the other Far Cry titles. We want to kind of reduce that as much as possible so that as you're driving along you can decide, okay, I'm going to go to this mission, or oh, what's this thing over there in the woods like you see in the temple. It's something that kind of pulls you off that main track and that's going to interest you and kind of make you deviate from the path. Far Cry at its core is a kind of a fairly open structure, and we want to pull that on as well. We want to say to the player, okay, look, you make the decision about where you head at a given moment. If you want to go and engage with the storyline, here it is, and you can follow it just ad infinitum. If you want to just be in the world and experience the world itself, we're going to give you enough things that kind of keep you interested in the island. It's going to have a really fully realised backstory. There's going to be lots of kind of unexpected details you're going to run across in the world. And that ability for you to decide when to kind of engage with the action and when you want to kind of maybe just go and have a bit more of an exploration. Maybe there are going to be some lighter moments in there as well to kind of break the kind of the full-on intensity. So it's going to be a bit of a mix of all of it. And then coupled with when you get really involved in the action, it's going to be super intense. We'll show you places, and you're not going to necessarily spot all of them all the time. I mean, it's really difficult to kind of create these environments where you have these little kind of vignettes, and some of it's going to be systemic and some of it's going to be required to be done in level design. But definitely, if you go off and explore the world, we're definitely going to want to reward you for that, either through kind of like, I mean, you've seen some of the stuff with searching bodies. It's going to be, actual kind of like, commodities that you're going to find out in the world, or cash or something like that. Also kind of narrative stuff and finding out a little bit more about the history of the island too. So it's going to be a real breadth. And then also variety in gameplay as well.
So I take it there's life cycle, weather and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, everything that you saw in Far Cry 2, those kind of things will definitely move on with. Same thing with Fire as well. We'll have Fire gameplay in there too. So, Fire system will be the same kind of system. So, it's going to be, when you let it go, it's going to spread, and you have to be a little bit careful about how you use it. It's definitely something that we want you to use as a kind of a tactical ingredient to direct the gameplay. But again, it's going to be much more about saying, okay, so set a fire here, then move around here, and using it in a way that you might think about. Once it's unleashed, you have to kind of worry about it. Beyond that, right now, we're going to kind of stay a wee bit kind of cagey about it, but there will be other stuff forthcoming, definitely. One of the big things is we want this to be a kind of a realistic, credible experience, and that's going to mean that, if you're on a jungle, you'd expect there are certain sort of like things around in the jungle, flora and fauna that you expect to see. We're not going to go into too much detail, but yes, we want that to be a really well-realized experience for you, definitely. You can have a look in the demo. There's some things in there that we're kind of hinting at the moment, things like the camera, all that kind of stuff. There's going to be a lot for you to do in this game. It's going to be super fully featured, definitely. Right now we're going much more with that kind of gritty, realistic tone, I think. It's much more taking its cue from Far Cry 2 just in terms of the overall tone of the game. Far Cry 1, perhaps the first half of it, is more that kind of feeling of, super gritty tone on a desert island or on that kind of place. And that's more what we're trying to push. And again, then sort of involving the character more in there. I think the feral powers and stuff have its place, and it's a really important part of the history. But right now we're going much more with the super gritty, realistic tone.